Hello everybody. Hello everybody. Welcome. I'm Prof. Malachi. I'm the real English teacher. Doesn't everybody say that? Doesn't everybody say they're going to teach you real English, authentic English, native English? What does that even mean? Okay, we're getting too philosophical. Welcome everybody. I'm Prof. Malachi. I'm the real English teacher who is showing you how to achieve that level of mastery that you really want. That's right. If it's art, music, business, literature, flirtature, seduction, flirtature, I just made that up. Whatever it is that you really want to use English for, those boring old books and apps and even really great YouTube videos made by people on the internet with cool lights to teach you English. None of that is gonna help you. Only me, the English teacher. All jokes aside, I'm going to be sharing with you today two things in this video. Number one is a concept. It's a little bit of a philosophy. And then number two is a practical exercise that you can use to make use of this philosophy, but they're both important, okay? You can't have one without the other. The philosophy without the practice makes no sense, and the practice without the deep understanding of why you're doing it also makes no sense. So I spent a few hours researching for the original video that I wanted to make here, and I was very disappointed. So the original video that I wanted to make was my top 5 podcast recommendations for English learners. And I started searching through some of the content that's on the internet that is made for English learners. And quite frankly, I'm very disappointed. It's all so basic and boring. Seriously, like even the stuff that claims to be interesting and not basic and boring is still fucking basic and boring. And I started thinking, of course people struggle to understand native spoken English because they're never practicing with it, right? And even TV shows are not a good example because TV shows are highly rehearsed. They're actors that have lines that are repeated. It's not really resembling real life, right? And so I find that if you really want to hack into a language, you want to get access to the matrix that a language generates. So English generates a matrix, Spanish, French, Japanese, they all generate their own kind of culture of concepts and ideas. And if you really want to hack into that, the best way that you can do that is to spend more time practicing with content generated by native speakers, which is intended for native speakers of English, okay? So you have to put yourself in the mind of like an American that is living inside of the country. What are they listening to? What are they consuming, right? What's the kind of language, the type of language? And this is actually very hard to understand or get access to sometimes, especially when you're on this weird wall of like, every time you type in, English classes, English books, English whatever, it's filtered through this filter that says, oh, you're learning English, so let me give you these, packaged resources where this is the 10 phrases and 20 phrasal verbs and 100 million things that you're saying wrong and 500 million thousand ways to say sorry differently. And none of that is really helpful. It's cool, it's amusing, and maybe I'll make some videos talking about that. But if you really want to get to the next level, what you need is this different mindset. So you've got to be thinking, like I said, what is a native speaker listening to and consuming? And then not only that, but what do I want to use the language for, right? This is very important because let's take myself as an example. Hi, I'm Malachi. I speak English. English is my native language. However, that's too broad because the English language has more words that I don't know than words that I do know. And if we take a very specific example like medicine, I have not studied medicine. I did not go to university and spend 10 years studying medicine. So a doctor who has spent the last 10 years of their life studying medicine has a very explicitly different vocabulary, language, and use for English. Do they speak a different English than I do? This brings me to my point here, which is you have to understand very clearly, why are you learning English? What is your end goal? What's the context and the type of language that you're going to need? And you begin practicing with that specifically. So now let's get into part 2 of the video. I'm gonna give you, in my opinion, the best way to start soaking your brain in English, native English content generated for native speakers. This is my favorite podcast. The podcast is called The Tim Ferriss Show. Now let me tell you a little bit about this podcast, why it's a great way for you to begin, and how I would actually use it if I were learning English. If I was in your position, this is exactly what I would do. So, number 1, this podcast is hosted by a guy named Tim Ferriss. And the core idea is that he interviews world-class performers, icons, billionaires, people who are the most highly successful in whatever field they are in. And it's everything. TV stars, actors, like chess players, high-performing athletes, knowledge workers, like anybody who is just crushing it, basically. He interviews them and he talks to them to understand their mindsets, their habits, their tricks, the way that they think about life. So it's very practical sometimes and it's very philosophical at other times. And so you can scroll through and find episodes specifically that are related to topics that you're interested in. And then I think the type of language in this podcast is very fantastic because it's conversational. It's not this like highly produced and edited show like a TV show on Netflix, right? It's very natural and authentic. So you get the sense that you're listening to two people have a natural conversation, and this can be very, very hard to get access to if you don't know where to look. Now you know where to look. So start with this, and here's how I would start with this. So start by listening passively. When you're on the bus, when you're in the car, when you're making your breakfast, when you're in the shower, whenever you have moments, gaps in the day, put the podcast on and just listen. If you can follow it and understand it, great. But don't worry about it. What you want to do first is expose your brain to it. And over time, your brain says, hey, these sounds, this pattern of speech, it's familiar. I've heard this before, it must be important. Then after 1 to 2 weeks of doing this, you want to begin analyzing it. So you're gonna pick maybe 1 minute, right? And you're going to repeat that 1 minute over and over again, looking up all the words, trying to repeat the way that they speak, trying to understand the meaning. And then you're going to replay the episode, right? And so you begin to mix your passive practice with your active practice. And the more that you do this, it's like a muscle. It will grow over time and it will become stronger. But don't become overwhelmed by the amount of content and resources out there. Build these habits up slowly and you will be transforming yourself into a language, into an English learning master. If you like this video, no. I know you like this video. This is good stuff. This has helped me tremendously in every language that I have learned. So like this video, subscribe. Like I said, I'm Profe Malachi. I'm the real English teacher, the only real English teacher. And I'm gonna be sharing all kinds of cool stuff just like this. Leave a comment, let me know how you like it, how your experience goes as you apply these techniques, and I'm gonna catch you in the next one.